The death toll in the tragic flash flood in central Texas now stands at 134. I'm Scripps News Andrew Rafferty, and this is happening now in America. The number of people missing from that July 4th flood is down to 101. Bad weather and more threats of flooding caused recovery missions to pause a few times. Central Texas expects to get more than 2.5 inches of rainfall today. Volunteers and officials say despite that, they are committed to finding all of the missing. And prices for groceries, clothes, and furniture went up last month, signaling the effects of President Trump's sweeping tariff push. The Labor Department reports that consumer prices went up 2.7%, the highest level since February. The rising inflation number most likely means Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell will leave the central bank rates the same. Powell said he wanted to see how the president's tariffs impact the economy before making a change. And an email alert was the only thing thousands of HHS workers got before being fired on Monday. The job cuts were originally announced on April 1st, but were delayed after a big legal battle. A U.S. Supreme Court ruling last week reversed that pause, allowing the department to move forward with the layoffs, all part of an executive order from President Trump issued back in February. And President Trump, along with a slew of cabinet officials and business leaders, are in Pittsburgh this evening for a summit focused on energy innovation. It comes as the White House continues to promote strong economic growth 6 months into the president's second term. A contrast to the rise in inflation data out this morning. Scripps News White House reporter and producer Jacob Garden-Schwartz is live with us now with the latest. And Jacob, we did just hear from President Trump in Pennsylvania. What stood out to you?
Well, good evening, Andrew. President just wrapping up his remarks at Carnegie Mellon University in Pittsburgh, speaking there to tout upwards of $90 billion of private investment, specifically about AI and energy. As we know, these new AI systems that have become somewhat ubiquitous draw quite a bit of power. And so in order to fuel them, a number of private companies making commitments to invest new power generation technologies in the state of Pennsylvania. The president hosted there by Senator David McCormick, the Republican of Pennsylvania, touting his administration's policies, the One Big Beautiful Bill that passed earlier this month, and suggesting that AI and this investment will help the United States maintain dominance over the AI sector, countering Chinese influence. Here's some of what he had to say. Listen.
We are leading. I heard somebody say before that we're going to try and catch China. We're not catching them. We're leading. But remaining the world's leader in AI will require an enormous increase in the energy production, and that's taking place, and you're doing it yourself, and a massive build-out of physical infrastructure and the tremendous technology skill that Pennsylvania has.
And as you noted, the president, as well as a number of cabinet officials there. On the flip side, you also had the Democratic governor of Pennsylvania and some state officials, and then a number of private business leaders, folks like CEOs of Google, OpenAI, some of these other, large AI and technology companies, as well as a number of companies that work in energy development specifically. The president touting his support for the fossil fuel industry. This comes, of course, as we saw throughout his campaign in the early months of his administration, really pushing back against Democrats' push to expand investments in renewable and green energy sources, and putting the CEOs in attendance in a bit of a tricky position. A number of them had previously expressed support for green energy initiatives, suggesting that, investments in energy of all kinds would be required in order to maintain American dominance in AI. But of course, as the president doubles down on what he's described as, quote, drill baby drill, it appears the CEOs are following with him there. Just one last note on the AI factor of it all. The president talking about this need to combat Chinese development and growth in this area comes as just last night the White House reversed course and will allow at least one technology company based here in the United States, NVIDIA, to begin selling some chips to the Chinese. This is something that the White House had previously blocked while it was undergoing those complex tariff negotiations with the Chinese. now the NVIDIA CEO saying that after a meeting with the president last week, they will allow this company to sell at least one of their chips to China, to companies over there. The White House not commenting on that specifically, but pointing us to remarks from the Commerce Secretary this morning, who argued that it is the case that they will be allowed to sell chips, but it's not the most advanced chips. Those are being kept here in America. The fourth most advanced chips are what are allowed to be sold in China. Andrew.
And Jacob, when it comes to inflation, we have those new numbers out today. This is a president who got into the White House in large part because his message on the economy resonated better with Americans than his Democratic opponent. How is the White House framing these numbers, which aren't, overall that noteworthy, other than the fact that they're similar to February, not exactly going in the direction that maybe the White House wanted? What has been the reaction to those numbers today?
Well, the reaction from the White House has been full speed ahead, denying that there's any problems or that the president's trade policies have anything to do with them. We've seen this in statements from the press secretary, who pointed to the core inflation data. Again, that considers the prices that don't factor in things like energy or food, which are a little bit more volatile, noting that those were about in line with what economists had expected. The president himself lashing out actually at a reporter who asked about the inflation numbers, suggesting that there is no inflation. So to your point, these numbers certainly not a giant red light by any means, things about where economists had expected them to be, but ticking in the wrong direction. And when you look at some of the data specifically, we see that the highest increases were in some of those products and industries that are most impacted by tariffs, things like domestic appliances, clothing, things that are manufactured overseas, shipped to the United States, and now subject to the president's tariffs. Economists telling us that they really expect the most impacts of these tariffs to continue to be borne out in some of these reports in the months to come. So we still don't exactly have the entire picture as far as how these tariffs are impacting the economy. Andrew.
All right, Scripps News White House producer and reporter Jacob Gardenschwartz for us. Jacob, thank you for that update. And educators are bracing for the mass layoffs coming to the Department of Education. This comes after the U.S. Supreme Court cleared the way for the Trump administration to do just that. President Trump has targeted the department since his days on the campaign trail. And Scripps News Global Affairs correspondent Maya Rodriguez joins us now. Maya, what is the potential impact to those in the education sphere on the latest ruling from the Supreme Court?
Andrew, President Trump's plan to downsize the Department of Education could mean that nearly 1,400 employees there will lose their jobs. Both supporters and opponents of the move say a smaller department could transform what many students experience in school. A downsized Department of Education could have major impacts for students who attend public schools and universities in the U.S. The agency, created in 1979, helps to distribute financial aid, support special education, and protect students' civil rights. The Trump administration, though, claims those initiatives won't go away.
It is not the president's goal to defund the programs. It is only to have it operate more efficiently.
But some who work in education worry that students who rely on those programs will suffer without the department operating at full force. Eric Duncan is with the think tank Ed Trust.
The most vulnerable student populations, students with disabilities, students that need those specific protections are going to be the ones most affected by these cuts.
That could include students who rely on the Office of Civil Rights, which investigates discrimination complaints like anti-Semitism. A former staffer of that office testified Tuesday that due to cuts, that office can't fulfill its mission anymore.
Are OCR equipped to fulfill those promises?
It is not.
Advocates of a smaller education department say it's grown too big, and a smaller model will help students. Jeannie Allen is the CEO of the Center for Education Reform.
A smaller Department of Education is significantly better for students and families to get a better education because they will have less oversight, interference, and freedom in what they seek for their kids.
A department that will now undergo unprecedented changes. Education Department employees who were told they were fired earlier this year have been on paid leave since March. With the Supreme Court's ruling, those employees can now be fully terminated. Andrew?
And there are concerns that this is the first step on a path that ultimately leads to the president trying to fully eliminate the department. Does he have the power to do that?
Well, you know, he could try, but really only Congress has the power to shut down a government agency. That would require 60 votes in the Senate, and that's really unlikely given the way the chamber is currently split along party lines. Andrew.
Scripps News Global Affairs correspondent Maya Rodriguez for us. Maya, thank you.
watching Scripps News, part of the Scripps News Group.
Well, this week, immigrants who arrive in the United States without documents will no longer be eligible for a bond hearing. The new policy change was announced in a memo last week from the Acting Immigration and Customs Enforcement Director, Todd Lyons. For the policy change, immigrants could request a bond hearing before an immigration judge. This move comes as the Trump administration ramps up efforts to keep immigrants legally detained. According to Syracuse University's Transactional Records Access Clearinghouse, immigration courts have a backlog of 3.46 million cases. Of those, 2.2 million immigrants are awaiting asylum hearings. To talk more about this is adjunct immigration law professor at Florida State University, Elizabeth Ricci. Thank you for being here. And I know you have worked with a lot of individuals impacted by these ICE raids. Let's start by talking a little bit about what you have seen and heard from those directly impacted.
Well, we're seeing a necessary prioritization of immigration enforcement. I think every reasonable person would agree that our system is broken. The problem is that the constitutional overreach and the procedural violations that we're seeing suggests that the administration is more interested in political messaging than the legal process. So people are scared. We're getting calls even from people who are U.S. citizens who are concerned about their ability to remain in the United States. So a lot of this is optics, but it is having a real effect on people.
And we mentioned today that administrative change, that those who arrive here will not necessarily be able to get a bond hearing. How much of an impact could that have?
That's going to have a huge impact. We're already seeing, in my office, I also practice immigration law, and my partner does deportation defense. We're already seeing bonds be denied for people who are being considered, quote, arriving aliens, despite, we had one the other day, someone who's been here for 18 years. That's never been considered an arriving alien. And we think about 1 million cases will be impacted where those detainees will not be eligible for bond under this new policy.
There has been a stat that's gotten a lot of headlines, and that came from ICE's own fiscal year 2025. The number of detained who have criminal convictions is about 72%. I think are not convicted of any criminal crimes. The rest, they say, have pending criminal charges or other violations. What's your reaction to that, and what do you think should be done with some of those other individuals who fall into those categories of not necessarily having a criminal conviction but are in the country illegally?
Well, I would like to point out that being in the country without documentation is not a crime. It's a civil infraction. It's a crime to re-enter the United States after having been deported. And it is correct, according to the federal government's own data, about 75% of people in immigration detention have no criminal history whatsoever. Of those 59,000 people who are detained currently, less than 10% have a criminal violation, and about 6.7% of them have violent crimes. So the vast majority of detainees have no criminal history, and that really flies in the face of this deport the worst of the worst mantra that the president has been mentioning, because this is not the worst of the worst. This is people who have either no serious criminal history or have an infraction like a traffic violation, and that is not a good use of government funds. We're seeing an appropriation recently, I think it was $170 billion for new immigration enforcement, which includes about $45 billion for new detention facilities. That's going to cost American taxpayers about $1,063 per taxpayer. That adds to the size of government, and it chips away at freedoms for everyone.
And where you are is Florida. One thing that has been getting a lot of attention is that so-called alligator Alcatraz. I know that you're in the northern part of the state, so not necessarily in your backyard, but this obviously has been driving the conversation about how we are treating those that are being rounded up and detained by these ICE agents. What is your reaction to that facility and how it has sort of become this political lightning rod?
A lightning rod is a great way to describe it. It's a facility outside of Naples that has been called Alligator Alcatraz. And my understanding is that it's housing 32 people per cell, and that there are 8 cells, and there is currently no running water in the facility. The inmates have not been able to bathe since at least Friday, and there is an infestation of mosquitoes there. So to say that the conditions are poor is an understatement. And people are concerned. Again, this is a lot about optics, calling it Alligator Alcatraz, and it's causing people to enter plea agreements that they might not have otherwise entered into, to agree to leave the United States without having a hearing, so that they may ask for an immigration benefit to be able to remain in the United States, whether they have family or employment opportunities here. They are often forsaking that because they don't want to be in a cell with 30-something other people.
Yeah. And what do you see as the biggest challenges right now to those people seeking legal immigration into the U.S.?
Well, we're seeing across the board that immigration, USCIS, is not abiding by precedent. They are haphazard at best right now. So people are scared that their status is going to be denied or revoked. People with TPS are particularly concerned. Like I said at the beginning of the moments with you, people who are U.S. citizens are concerned about having their citizenship revoked. There's a new effort to denaturalize 50,000 people. So I think across the board, people who are immigrants, whether they're documented or not, are concerned, and naturalized citizens are concerned. But I think everybody should be concerned, because the more that we deny due process to one group, the more likely it is that due process will be denied to other groups.
All right. Elizabeth Ricci, professor at Florida State University, thank you so much for your time and your expertise. I want to look ahead to the bottom of the hour. We take a look at how the Trump administration's crackdown is playing out in real time. A youth coach says ICE agents disrupted baseball practice to question his young players. Stay tuned for our report from Katie Tubman.
The Supreme Court just handed President Trump another victory, this time involving his plan to downsize the Department of Education. So what does that mean for your child's education? For one, the ruling from the Supreme Court does not outright eliminate the Department of Education. Only Congress can do that. However, because the department has historically been the smallest cabinet agency with only around 4,000 employees, a cut of around 1,400 staffers could hamper tasks still handled by the department. In a statement, Education Secretary Linda McMahon said, "Today the Supreme Court again confirmed the obvious. The President of the United States, as the head of the executive branch, has the ultimate authority to make decisions about staffing levels, administrative organization, and day-to-day operations of federal agencies." President Trump, for his part, writing on Truth Social, "The United States Supreme Court has handed a major victory to parents and students across the country by declaring the Trump administration may proceed on returning the functions of the Department of Education back to the states." The Supreme Court ruling is the most recent ruling giving authority to President Trump to downsize the federal government as he wishes. Last week, the High Court signed off on a separate request to downsize other agencies. Democracy Forward, a group that opposes President Trump's efforts, says the U.S. Supreme Court today delivered a significant blow to public education in America, effectively allowing President Trump's attempt to dismantle the U.S. Department of Education to proceed while a case challenging the unlawful cuts is considered. As for what is next for the department, the expectation is the Secretary of Education, Linda McMahon, will work to shift some current responsibilities of the department to other cabinet agencies. Meanwhile, a coalition of 24 states sued the Department of Education on Monday over $6.8 billion in funding that the Trump administration has recently withheld, money that helps schools pay for programs like after-school care.
If this latest federal action goes unchecked, our students, our families, our schools, and our communities will absolutely suffer.
Joe St. George, Scripps News Group, Washington.
A U.S. citizen who spied on the Ukrainian military for Russia was given a Russian passport today. I'm Scripps News Andrew Rafferty, and you're watching Happening Now in America. Russian state media reported that Daniel Martindale reacted by calling Russia his, quote, home, and said he is extremely happy. Over 2 years, Martindale allegedly shared the locations of Ukraine's army and other important information in eastern Ukraine. And a federal judge is blocking the Trump administration from using its own travel ban to stop already vetted refugees from entering the country. This injunction affects about 80 refugees, and U.S. District Judge Jamal Whitehead's decision, he said that the travel ban, quote, expressly states that it does not limit the ability of people to seek refugee status. Essentially, by stopping refugees from entering the U.S., it would limit their ability to gain refugee status. President Trump issued the ban in June and includes 12 countries, among them Afghanistan, Iran, Sudan, Libya, and Haiti. And immigrants who arrive in the United States without documents will no longer be eligible for a bond hearing. The new policy change was announced in a memo last week from the acting ICE director, Todd Lyons. Before the policy change, immigrants could request a bond hearing from an immigration judge. The move comes as Trump ramps up efforts to keep immigrants legally detained. And under the Trump administration, you have likely heard of the immigration officers making arrests in places that have previously been off limits, places like churches. And now it's happened at a youth baseball game. Scripps News correspondent Katie Tubman is with us live. And Katie, this story has been getting a lot of traction online. Walk us through what happened.
That's right, Andrew. Well, here in New York, where ICE enforcement operations have ramped up, agents have been spotted at restaurants, hotels, churches, and schools. And according to one New York City baseball coach, a park where his boys come to play baseball, sorry. Yes.
Keep your head on the ball.
Yeoman Wilder has been teaching boys baseball for 20 years, most recently here at Riverside Park on Manhattan's Upper West Side. But this was the first time he saw ICE show up during practice for the kids and teens in his group.
Well, we were just finishing up a practice, and I went to shoot some hoops. And next thing we just see these guys coming in their uniforms.
Wilder says he recognized they were ICE agents because of their gear.
So I didn't really pay any attention to it until they came towards our kids. And the next thing I see, what I hear is asking them where they're from, how old are they? Just inappropriate questions. And I said, this is inappropriate. They don't really have to they don't have to answer anything you have to say. So I'm going to ask them to invoke their Fifth Amendment right.
Wilder said he told his kids to go to the back of this batting cage, putting himself directly in between agents and the kids they were questioning.
There's only one way to get into the cage. So my whole thing was, I can control that. I was in front of the entrance, and that's when I just said, I may die here, but they will not take one of these kids.
Did you ever expect something like that to happen here?
Never. Upper West Side, the bastion of liberalism, I would never thought that was going to happen up here.
Why do you think ICE would go up to kids or your kids?
I think because they saw that there were some kids here who were Latino. I don't think they were here to take kids. I think they were just here to make a statement. We're here.
Since the confrontation, some of the kids have not returned to the park.
You have a right to be here. I tell my kids all the time, if you want to come, that's fine. No matter what, I'm going to be here at this time, and I will protect you. Go over there and start.
Now, Scripps News Group has reached out to ICE to confirm and answer questions about the incident, but has not yet received a response. Local community leaders are encouraging people to know their rights, especially as ICE raids become more common. Andrew?
And Katie, obviously we heard from the coaches there, these young children. Have the parents at all responded to what's happened?
Well, the parents have stayed out of this largely, and Wilder said he spoke to the parents and they were disturbed and upset by the incident, but they are asking to be left out of any of the national attention that's going on out of respect for their kids and their families. And meanwhile, Wilder said he hopes that the one good thing that could come out of this incident is that parents more so talk to their kids about if or when they are approached by ICE. Andrew?
All right, Scripps News correspondent Katia Tubman for us. Katia, thank you.
Thank you.
Crews are continuing to battle the airport fire, focusing on hotspots and how it started.
A neighbor called me and said there was a fire right north of town.
A fire threatening the town of Lavier Sunday, coming within feet of homes and structures.
It came real close to my property.
Like Steve Williams' home and others.
The houses that were really threatened were the ones down in the lower part of Lavier's, at least initially.
On Monday, that threat is mainly gone as containment increases.
We are very fortunate that this fire did not spread more quickly.
Douglas County officials praising its heli-tac team for that feat.
That helicopter was in the air within 10 minutes of this fire going out.
Despite requesting more help, like the state's Firehawk, Dougco was told it's unavailable. Denver 7 asked why that resource isn't available. A spokesperson with the Colorado Division of Fire Prevention and Control telling us, quote, the Firehawk is currently in its required phased maintenance, which takes it out of service. The maintenance schedule is based on flight hours. The aircraft was taken out of service on Sunday and may be down for several weeks. So as wildfire season heats up in Colorado, so does the competition for resources. State and federal hand crews were also requested for the airport fire. They were unavailable because of other fires burning in the state.
There's a sense of urgency.
As for what started the airport fire, that's still under investigation.
The fire did travel along multiple spot fires along the train tracks, and there was a train in the area, but it is undetermined if the cause was from the train or not.
Though for those who call Lavier's home, the work done Sunday was vital and appreciated.
I can say the firemen did a great job.
Veronica Acosta, Scripps News Group.
I'm Madison Myers reporting in your neighborhood of Lampasas County here at WM Brook Park, one of the many areas affected by heavy flooding and rain over the weekend. I spoke to residents and state agencies about the impact and the emergency response that followed. Communities across central Texas continue cleaning up following heavy rain and flooding sweeping through the region over the weekend.
Flooded a bunch of neighborhoods, flooded just the roadways were impassable a lot of places.
The Lampasas River surging more than 30 feet, shocking nearby residents.
And if that's the case, that would be the highest that's ever been in 20 years. No, this is just more rain than usual this year. Normally, we might get one big event in a year, but not two.
The flooding in Lampasas also led to downed trees, road closures, and evacuations. Texas game wardens were deployed, executing several search and rescue operations, including a dramatic rescue after a vehicle was swept nearly a mile downstream.
The gentleman actually swam and climbed into a tree and self-rescued. The female occupant, she was later found down the road, or down the river rather, in the vehicle, was rescued from that.
Major Satsky tells me one of the most common and dangerous mistakes during flash floods is driving into high water.
People get out the roads that they typically take to work or to wherever they're going in the morning. It's still, dark. They get out there thinking that they're not going to encounter an issue like this, and no fault to them, but they drive into a water crossing that's flooded, and then everything kind of goes south from there.
That's why he's urging Texans to stay vigilant and monitor local weather alerts.
Make sure that if your area is under a flash flood warning or some other type of flooding event, that you're paying attention to that news.
Regardless, he tells me game wardens are ready to respond to whatever comes next.
Right now, we're in a standby posture, so we have everybody ready, prepared for the water that's coming down from these rivers, potentially more rain that could cause flash flooding in some of these areas that are already super saturated and already have really high river levels. So we're just prepared to respond to those if and when it hits.
Madison Myers, Scripps News Group.
As an entire community in Texas mourns and works to recover, there are so many families who need help. That's why the Scripps Howard Fund is committed to providing relief in the areas that need it the most. Through your generous support, Scripps News Group and the Scripps Howard Fund have raised more than $101,000 in donations. The EW Scripps Company has contributed $25,000 in those donations. Every dollar of that money will go directly to local organizations on the ground that can help in the recovery efforts. If you would like to donate, just scan the QR code on your screen to make a tax-deductible donation or text the word flooding to 50155. 50155. 50155. 50155. 50155. 50155. 50155. 50155. 50155. 50155. 50155. 50155. 50155. 50155. 50155. 50155. 50155. 50155. 50155. 50155. 50155. 50155. 50155. 50155. 50155. 50155. 50155. 50155. 50155. 50155. 50155. 50155. 50155. 50155. 50155. 50155. 50155. 50155. 50155. 50155. 50155. 50155. 50155. 50155. 50155. 50155. 50155. 50155. 50155. 50155. 50155. 50155. 50155. 50155. 50155. 50155. 50155. 50155. 50155. 50155. 50155. 50155. 50155. 50155. 50155. 50155. 50155. 50155. 50155. 50155. 50155. 50155. 50155. 50155. 50155. 50155. 50155.
If you can imagine it, there's a video for it, all for your viewing pleasure.
Practicing our sexual activity in a way that is private and is healthy and is unique to us.
But starting at the end of September, Mallory McMaster says she'll have to find a new way to express her sexuality.
Creating a log of the pornography that we watch is not a direction that we want to go in as a country.
To crack down on kids and teens accessing pornography, Ohio Rep. Josh Williams put a provision in the budget requiring every watcher to provide age verification.
We're going to preserve and protect the innocence of our kids here in the state of Ohio.
Verification would be done by submitting a photo of your state ID or by entering your personal information into a third-party system that will then run your details through other online or government databases. It could also use facial recognition technology. Companies would be penalized if they don't comply.
Shut down that website if necessary.
McMaster fears that data could be leaked. Just since 2024, hackers have stolen medical, financial, and legal data from at least hundreds of thousands of Ohioans at both the state and local levels. But lawmakers argue that companies would be required to have a system that protects and deletes sensitive information. And Williams says if adults are worried,
You can go and purchase your old school DVDs and watch your pornography at home. So I'm sorry, but we will not sacrifice the innocence of our children for the inconvenience of adults.
the law also has a provision that uses geofences to block users, with Williams saying it will make it harder to use VPNs, which bypass firewalls. Pornhub, the most visited explicit content provider in the country, says users won't stop looking for porn. They'll just go to darker corners of the internet that don't even moderate content. And because the U.S. Supreme Court decided that Texas's similar requirement is constitutional, Pornhub has removed some of their sites in states with age verification laws.
We're actually going to make it harder to keep people watching healthy pornography.
So get your IDs ready, starting on September 29th. At the Ohio State House, I'm Morgan Trow reporting.
When I first started this, all we had was a gut feeling that it was a bad idea to put 100 million people and 100 million choices into the pockets of 14-year-olds and expect them to daily make good choices.
Chris McKenna is the founder of Protect Young Eyes, an organization that helps families navigate the dangers of the digital world and create safer online spaces for children. He believes handing a child a smartphone with no boundaries can be very risky and addictive, including online games.
Certain games that look innocent and fun have very addictive qualities, the big three being Minecraft, Fortnite, and Roblox.
Yes, even Roblox.
Roblox has 40 million games with hundreds of millions of people using it every single month. And you just dropped your 10-year-old off at a playground with all of them.
And the more addicted a child gets to their phone, McKenna says the more emotionally sensitive they become when it comes to any kind of criticism.
Meaning those that have the most number of pickups and the most amount of screen time have a hypersensitivity to feedback from those around them in the real world and have a lessening of impulse control. So now we're not just talking about behaviors, we're talking about changes in neurology as a result of that amount of digital interaction.
McKenna believes those changes in emotions and behaviors reflect the real physical changes going on in that child's developing brain.
Every social media platform that kids can't put down was built with the teenage limbic system in mind. That I want to explore, I want to be noticed, I want to be popular. Those are all limbic system impulses around the question of am I loved, which is the main question that that part of the brain is asking in every human being all day long.
So what's the answer?
Delay is the way is not a no-tech strategy, it's a slow-tech strategy. We're all about right tech, right kid, right time.
And he says that right kid is important because every child is different.
What might be the right tech for a son at age 14 may not be the right tech for another son at age 14. Right kid, right tech, right time.
But he also cautions parents, you cannot eliminate every digital risk in your child's life. So, if you've already allowed your kid to have endless access to social media, it's time for you to take a very active role.
My response to that mom is now it's time to be ridiculous. What do I mean by that? Ridiculously intentional, ridiculously frequent conversations, ridiculously direct conversations, ridiculously observant, ridiculously involved, ridiculously informed. Because to me, it's all about a balance of risk.
And McKenna warns about the increase in girls self-harming. So he recommends constantly checking their phone for their own safety. He says it's not an invasion of privacy, as no underage child actually owns their own phone.
Because every digital device in every home is actually owned by parents, and kids just have the luxury of using them. That's what we call parent-led ownership.
Wendy Ryan, Scripps News Group.
Take a look at this. This bus is covered in hundreds of messages and signatures, and some adding to it locally as it travels across 14 states. And all this is being done in opposition of the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. 12-year-old cousins Jimena and Dacia Reyes adding their messages on the bus.
I'm Jimena Reyes.
After expressing concerns relating to health care.
I want them to know, to be strong and, to fight for this.
Jimena has sickle cell disease.
There are a lot of people with illnesses, too, like for example, me. And it's very, very hard to live with an illness.
The cousins joined by about 50 others at the town hall. The cross-country tour started before the bill was passed.
It really has switched to we're going to hold them accountable. We now know which members of Congress betrayed their own constituents.
Congressman Juan Ciscomani voting along party lines in favor of the bill, releasing a statement after the House passed the bill saying in part, I am grateful to the many stakeholders across our district who shared their expertise, personal stories, and insights over the last few months as we worked through the reconciliation process. H.R. 1 is not perfect, no bill ever is, but it includes many provisions that I know my constituents in southeastern Arizona support. There is more work to do, and I look forward to continuing to work together for our district and community. Fair Share America's executive director, Kristen Kroll, saying now since passed, they want to document how people will be impacted and continue to organize in hopes to get it repealed.
We know that it's going to take several years to build enough power to say no, but yes, this was awful and the most egregious bill I've ever seen in my lifetime.
Reporting near Tucson and 18th, Madison Thomas, Scripps News Group.
He was just covered in blood. It was crazy.
Jimmy Alexander arrived at Bluegrass Airport for a flight to Florida, but was instead thrust into a critical situation. He witnessed a Kentucky State Trooper lying in the grass as the man who shot the trooper, Guy House, was driving away from airport property.
Never in a blue million years would I have thought something like this would have happened.
So his family quickly pulled over to help. Alexander tells LEX18 his wife and stepdaughter are nurses. They started applying pressure and a tourniquet to the wound, while Alexander provided water to the injured trooper.
I mean, it was a chaotic moment. He could have bled out. The adrenaline rush was so crazy, I wasn't thinking about anything else. I don't think any of us was.
Alexander says first responders arrived in minutes, but
it felt like forever. You know, you're sitting here with a guy that could possibly die, you know.
Despite the family's quick thinking and heroic actions, Anderson says,
we're not heroes. We, we're just your average human beings, everyday people. When you see somebody in need, you stop, pull over, you help, whatever the situation is.
The family says they're relieved to know the trooper is going to be okay. AJ Patel, Scripps News Group.
Tesla launched in India on Tuesday, opening its first showroom in Mumbai, according to CNN News 18. A top official in India launched the event and voiced support for future EV manufacturing in the country. Tesla CEO and sometimes friend of U.S. President Donald Trump, Elon Musk, was not in attendance. Importers gave the Port of Los Angeles a major boost in June as they rushed to beat looming tariffs. The Port of Los Angeles saw record-breaking cargo volume in June, up 32% from May. Importers were racing to get goods in before the July 9th tariff pause expired. Now, with a new deadline of August 1st, businesses are scrambling once again. President Trump's latest tariff plan includes steep hikes on goods from the EU, Canada, China, and more. That's pushing retailers to stock up early, especially ahead of the holiday season. But port officials expect volume to drop sharply in August as companies avoid speculative ordering and brace for higher costs. The Department of Defense is teaming up with artificial intelligence companies. The Chief Digital and Artificial Intelligence Office announcing contracts with leading AI giants. Those include Anthropic, Google, OpenAI, and xAI. Each company is being given up to $200 million to help the agency adopt AI to address critical national security challenges.